My husband punched my pregnant sister in the stomach, and thank God he did. My husband walked up to my 8-month pregnant sister during her baby shower and punched her full force in the stomach. She folded in half and crashed backward into the gift table, while 50 guests screamed. It happened amidst the perfect white lilies of the botanical garden. A violent red stain on a picture-perfect afternoon. Drop a comment and let me know where you're listening from and what time it is for you right now. I'd love to know who's part of our community. The sound of the punch was sickening. A dull thud that echoed off the glass walls. I shoved Ryan backward, screaming at him, asking what kind of monster he was. My mother, Linda, was already on the phone with 911, sobbing about an assault on a pregnant woman. My father, David, and my cousins had Ryan pinned against the trellis wall. I was hitting Ryan's chest, calling him a psychopath, while my sister Ashley lay on the grass, clutching her belly and crying that something was wrong with the baby. It was absolute chaos. Guests were running for their cars, abandoning the crystal flutes of champagne. I dropped to my knees beside Ashley. I had my hands shaking as I reached out to feel for the baby. I needed to feel a kick, a movement, anything to prove life still existed inside her. But she slapped my hands away with a strength that shocked me, screaming for me not to touch her stomach. My mother was hyperventilating, leaning against a table of expensive gifts. Ashley kept her arms wrapped around her stomach so tight that her knuckles were white. Ryan was struggling against the men holding him. He wasn't fighting to escape, he was fighting to be heard. He had this look in his eyes, not anger, but a terrifying urgency. He yelled at me to look at her stomach. He screamed that I needed to look at where he had hit her. I wanted to kill him for ruining this day. But then I saw it. There was a deep dent in Ashley's belly. It wasn't a bruise. It was a concave depression in the shape of a fist that wasn't popping back out. Flesh doesn't do that. It looked like a crushed memory foam pillow that hadn't regained its shape. Ryan yelled again, his voice cracking. He said it was memory foam under her dress, not a baby. He said he could prove everything she had been doing. I moved before Ashley could stop me. I reached out and pressed my hand firmly onto the dent. My fingers didn't meet the resistance of a taut uterus. They sank into soft, synthetic foam. I felt the hard plastic edge of a Velcro strap beneath the expensive silk of her maternity gown. My hands went numb. It felt cold and lifeless. The world seemed to tilt. The screaming around me faded into a dull roar. I looked at Ashley. Her eyes weren't filled with pain anymore. They were filled with the panic of a magician whose trick has been exposed. She tried to push me away, but I kept pressing on the foam. I found more straps. I found padding. I ripped the fabric of her dress at the waistline, exposing the industrial-grade prosthetic strapped to her torso. The silence that fell over the garden was heavier than the screaming. 50 people stared at the gray foam contraption. My mother stopped crying mid-sob. My father let go of Ryan's arm. Ashley scrambled backward, looking like a trapped animal. She snarled at Ryan, her face twisting into something ugly. She said he ruined everything. She ripped the fake belly off and threw it on the ground. It landed with a hollow thud near the gift table. She stood up, her flat stomach visible through the torn dress, and screamed that we were all idiots. She screamed that the teenager didn't deserve the baby anyway, and she would have given it a perfect life. I watched my sister's mask fall off. I realized in that moment that the person I had protected my whole life didn't exist. Ryan hadn't assaulted a pregnant woman. He had punched a predator wearing a costume. As the police sirens wailed in the distance, I realized this wasn't just a family dispute. This was a crime scene. The police cars screeched to a halt at the front gates. Officers rushed in, expecting a brawl. What they found was a weeping woman next to a discarded foam stomach, and a man being held by his own father-in-law. You would think the sight of that gray prosthetic would be enough to vindicate Ryan. You would think the physical proof of Ashley's deception would snap my parents out of their trance. But that is not how my family works. My mother pointed a shaking finger at Ryan. She screamed at the officers to arrest him. She said he was violent. She didn't point at the foam belly. She looked only at the disruption of the peace she had spent 30 years curating. My father chimed in, telling the police that Ryan had assaulted his daughter. In sociology, there's a concept called the missing stare. It describes a person within a social group who is known to be untrustworthy or dangerous, a stair in the staircase that is broken. But instead of fixing the stair, everyone in the house just learns to step over it. They normalize the danger, and if someone new comes into the house and trips on that missing stair, the family doesn't blame the broken step. They blame the person who didn't know the special walk required to avoid it. Ashley was our missing stair. For decades, we had stepped over her lies and her cruelty. We adjusted our stride to accommodate her brokenness. We made excuses. Ryan was the only one who refused to step over it. He had stomped right on the broken step, and when it collapsed, my parents didn't blame the rot. They blamed the boot that exposed it. The officers didn't care about the nuance. They saw a man who had admitted to punching a woman. They slammed Ryan against the trellis. I watched the handcuffs click onto his wrists. He didn't fight them. He looked calm, almost relieved. As the officers dragged him past me, he stopped for a split second. He told me to check the laptop. He said she was hunting someone. He said the password was her birthday backwards. The officers shoved him into the cruiser. I stood there frozen while my parents rushed to comfort Ashley. My mother was wrapping a shawl around Ashley's shoulders, whispering that it was going to be okay. Ashley was sobbing, already spinning the narrative, saying she only wore the foam because she had miscarried and was afraid to tell us. It was a lie so bold it took my breath away, and my parents were swallowing it whole. I looked at them, this huddle of dysfunction, and I felt something snap inside me. It wasn't a breakdown. It was a severance. I had been the silent investor in this family's delusion for too long. I had paid the emotional taxes, but the audit was over. I turned my back on them. I walked straight to my car, pulled out my phone, and called a locksmith. Ryan had given me a directive. He had sacrificed his freedom to stop a crime I didn't even understand yet. The least I could do was find the proof. I drove to Ashley's apartment with a cold, hard clarity. I wasn't a sister anymore. I was a witness securing the crime scene. I let myself in with the spare key. The apartment was immaculate, smelling of vanilla candles. In the second bedroom, she had set up a nursery. It was breathtaking. A hand-carved crib that cost $6,500 sat in the center. There were plush toys and a closet full of clothes. It looked like a sanctuary, but it felt like a spider web waiting for a fly. I went to the kitchen island and opened her laptop. I typed in her birthday backwards. It unlocked immediately. The desktop was cluttered, but one folder stood out. It was labeled Project Zoe. I clicked it open, and my blood ran cold. It wasn't a scrapbook. It was a dossier. Hundreds of surveillance photos filled the screen. There was a young girl, Zoe, walking into a free clinic, waiting at a bus stop, eating a sandwich on a park bench alone. I clicked on a document titled Schedule. It was a detailed log of this girl's life for the past 4 months. Target arrival at clinic 8:45 a.m. Target lunch break 12:15 p.m. Target takes the 4:02 bus home. Ashley hadn't found a random pregnant girl. She had hunted her. She had identified Zoe's vulnerabilities, her lack of family, her financial struggles, her isolation. She had weaponized this girl's loneliness against her. I found a subfolder labeled Assets. Ashley had hacked hospital records. She had Zoe's blood type, medical history, and the shift schedule for the maternity ward nurses. Then, I opened the spreadsheet labeled Budget. This was the smoking gun. I saw the transfers listed by date and donor. Mom and Dad, $15,000. Aunt Sarah, $5,000. Emily, $2,500. The total income was $95,400. She had scammed us all. But the expenses column was worse. She hadn't spent the money on medical bills, GPS trackers, long-range photography equipment, uniforms, nurse scrubs, induction fee. I froze. Nurse scrubs. I went back to the calendar. The date for tomorrow was circled in red. Zoe induction, 6 a.m. Extraction window, 7:30 p.m. The horror settled into my bones. This wasn't just a fake pregnancy for attention. This was an operational plan for kidnapping. Ashley was going to the hospital tomorrow, dressed as a nurse, to steal Zoe's baby right out of the maternity ward. Ryan hadn't just punched a liar. He had intercepted a predator hours before she was set to strike. I copied every file to a flash drive. I was done being the daughter. I was the evidence collector. And I was about to burn Ashley's world to the ground. I went straight to Dr. Evans, a forensic psychiatrist and family friend. I needed him to look at the evidence before my parents could spin this as a mental health crisis. They were already claiming Ashley had pseudocyesis, a phantom pregnancy delusion. They wanted her to be sick so she would get sympathy instead of prison. Dr. Evans looked at the spreadsheets and surveillance logs. He took off his glasses and shook his head. "This isn't pseudocyesis," he said. "This is malingering." He explained that women with phantom pregnancies believe the lie. They're tragic figures. They don't track victims with GPS tags or budget for hush money. Malingering is the intentional production of false symptoms for external gain. Ashley knew exactly what she was doing. She did it for the money and the narcissistic supply. She wasn't deluded. She was a calculating architect of fraud. Knowing the difference changed everything. It meant she was evil. Not ill. Detectives secured a warrant, and we returned to Ashley's apartment near midnight. They swept through the rooms, tagging the fake bellies and the nurse scrubs. But it was what they found in the back of the master closet that turned my stomach. The detective drilled out a deadbolt on the interior closet door. When it swung open, the air felt stale. It wasn't a closet. It was a dressing room for a twisted play. Hanging on the rack were clothes that didn't belong to my sister. Ashley wore designer silk. Hanging here were faded denim jackets, oversized hoodies, and worn-out sneakers. Taped to the wall were the surveillance photos of Zoe. In one photo, Zoe was wearing a gray hoodie with a specific logo. Hanging right next to the photo was the exact same hoodie. Above it sat a wig, dark, wavy, and styled in a messy bun. Exactly matching Zoe's hair. I felt the bile rise. This wasn't just kidnapping. This was identity theft in its most primal form. Ashley didn't just want to steal the baby. She wanted to erase Zoe. She wanted to slide into this girl's existence and rewrite the narrative with herself as the star. She viewed Zoe not as a human being, but as an incubator. The detective bagged the wig. She was going to walk into that hospital looking like the victim's twin. He muttered. She could have walked right out with the baby. Ryan had saved 2 lives that day. He had saved the baby from being stolen, and he had saved Zoe from being replaced. 3 months later, the courtroom was a theater, and Ashley was determined to be the star. She had fired her public defender and chosen to represent herself, a classic narcissist move. She walked in wearing a modest suit, looking every inch the wronged victim. But the prosecution started with Zoe. Zoe walked to the stand carrying her 6-month-old daughter. She looked terrified, wearing a thrift store dress. But when she looked at her baby, her face softened. She told the jury how nice Lady Ashley had befriended her, brought her coffee, and made her feel like she mattered. The jury was visibly sickened by the cruelty of preying on someone so desperate for connection. Then it was Ashley's turn to cross-examine. This was the moment she destroyed herself. Instead of attacking the evidence, she attacked Zoe's worth. You were living in a shelter before you got that apartment, weren't you, Ashley asked, her voice dripping with disdain. How did you expect to provide for a child? I have a job, Zoe whispered. I love her. Love doesn't buy diapers. Ashley snapped. I had a $6,000 crib waiting. I had a college fund set up. Why do you think you deserve that baby more than someone who could actually give her a future? The courtroom went silent. Ashley had exposed the rot at her core. She didn't hate Zoe because she thought Zoe was unfit. She hated Zoe because Zoe had the one thing Ashley couldn't buy natural: sacrificial love. Ashley believed wealth equated to maternal worth. She thought she could purchase a human being because she deserved one. When Ryan took the stand, he was calm. The prosecutor asked about the punch. I saw the foam, he said. I saw the lie. In that split second, I knew she was a threat. I hit her to stop her. And looking at that baby in Zoe's arms right now, I'd do it again. The jury deliberated for less than 2 hours. Guilty on all counts. Attempted kidnapping, stalking, identity theft, wire fraud. Ashley screamed when the verdict was read. She screamed that we were jealous, that the jury was stupid. As the bailiffs dragged her out, Ryan stood up and watched her go, his face cold. The missing stair had been removed by demolition. The judge gave Ashley 18 years. She didn't cry. She just looked bored, as if the sentencing was a tedious meeting. She wasn't sorry for what she did. She was only sorry the plot had failed. My parents sat in the back row, holding hands, looking 10 years older. The financial ruin was total $95,000 stolen plus legal fees, but the emotional bankruptcy was worse. They had spent their lives building a shrine to a daughter who didn't exist. They started therapy the week after. Deprogramming 30 years of enabling is hard work. They had to learn that saying no to a predator isn't cruelty, it's survival. But they were trying, for the first time, they were trying to see reality instead of curating it. 2 years later, we sat in an auditorium for a graduation ceremony. Zoe walked across the stage to accept her nursing pin. She stood tall, smiling at the crowd. In the audience, her daughter, now a toddler, clapped her hands. Mama, she squealed. I looked at Ryan. He was holding Zoe's daughter on his lap. His hands, the same hands that had thrown the punch, were gentle. Seeing him there, the knot in my chest finally loosened. I had nightmares about the violence of that day, worrying about what it meant that the man I loved was capable of such force. But watching him now, I realized that force isn't always evil. Sometimes, it's the only barrier between innocence and destruction. He hadn't punched my sister because he was angry. He had punched her because he was a guardian. We have our own daughter now. Named Hope. When I hold her, I feel the weight of responsibility. I check the locks at night, but I know she is safe because she has a father who will tear down the world to protect her, and a mother who will never look away from the truth again. Ashley writes letters from prison. We burn them. We have learned that you cannot negotiate with a void. People ask if I regret how it went down. I tell them the truth. Violence is never the answer. Until it's the only thing standing between a monster and a child. Sometimes, you have to break the silence to save the song. And if punching a predator in the stomach is what it takes to see a toddler clapping for her mother at graduation, then thank God he did. If you think Ryan did the right thing, hit that like button. And share this with someone who needs to know that protecting your family sometimes means fighting for them literally. Thanks for watching.